send it to you if you want to share it
Okay.
with people that need it.
Oh, afterwards?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I have it. I can send
Or
it
I
to
guess I
folks.
can upload it here too, right?
Yeah.
Uh, okay, maybe I spoke sooner than. um, okay, how do I do that? I think I should be able to. Should I be able to upload this? Hmm. Yes, I will share it with everybody here. Um, maybe. It, not exactly. Okay, I'll email it to you and then maybe.
I have it. Yeah, I can do it.
uh, yeah,
Okay. All right. Okay.
all right.
Is this taking up the full screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah,
Yeah,
take it
yeah.
away, Hirsch.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Hirsch Sisodia, one of the senior immigration advisors in the Office of Global Learning's International Services. And I'm joined by my colleague, Lauren Gabusi, who is the programming guru and in charge of all programmatic stuff. So she's going to also be helping field any questions that you have. And also, I believe, also going to be taking care of the recording. So we are going to be recording this and uploading it on our website. So in this session, we're going to be covering, I'm going to go over briefly over some basic travel information regarding F1 and J1 students, what documents and things they should be carrying, what they should be aware of. And then afterwards, I can field any question. So I will get started with that first slide. So essentially, it's not the exit that's an issue. It's always re-entry, and we're always looking at when you're thinking about traveling abroad anytime outside the United States, you want to make sure you have the appropriate documents needed to re-enter the United States in the appropriate status, right? So if you're an F1 student, you exit as an F1 student, you want to return as an F1 student. Same thing applies if you're a J1 student, you're traveling abroad for a short duration, you want to come back in the J1 status. So things you should be carrying with you are always one, a valid passport. That means it's unexpired and in good condition. Sometimes, if you put it in the wash or something like that, it gets damaged, it may now no longer be technically a valid document. Okay, so be careful about that part. The other thing you want to make sure is that your passport is also valid for at least 6 months into the future from the date you plan on re-entering the United States. So, for example, if let's say you're leaving for the holidays and you come back on January 1st, you want to come back on January 1st into the US, you want to make sure that that passport doesn't expire at least until June or July. Okay, that's a kind of a general gauge you want to have. So you want to have that validity in there, all right, for the passport. The other thing you want to make sure is that you've got a valid entry stamp. So if you're an F1 student, you've got an unexpired valid entry visa stamp. If you're a J1, you want to make sure you've got the appropriate J1 visa stamp, unless you are a Canadian citizen. Then you're exempted. Canadian citizens don't require a visa for F or J travel. The other things you want to make sure you have, if you've got a I-20 or DS 2019, that it has a travel signature from our office. And I want to make sure that for F1 students who are continuing in their academics, that's valid for 1 year from the date of travel, unless you're a Canadian citizen. Again, for Canadians, it's only valid for 6 months. So there's that differentiation. Okay. Same thing applies for DS 2019. The DS 2019 has a travel signature on page 1. Take a look at that. It's going to talk about the duration that signature. I believe it's generally also 1 year on that thing. But for I-20s, page 2 has your travel signature. Again, that's not for exit, it's for entry purposes, okay? And DS 2019 has it on page 1. It's a good idea to carry your proof of financial support, meaning that however you are being funded for your education, right? So either it's through personal, meaning your parents or yourself, you're the ones who are funding it. Make sure you carry appropriate documents that prove that you have the funds necessary to be in the United States and be able to fund yourself while you're here. If you are on an assistantship, make sure you have those assistantship documents. It may not be needed, but it's always a good idea to carry that in case that officer at the port of entry asks you to prove that. At that point, you want to make sure that you have these documents. Other good things to carry are proof of enrollment. Make sure that you go to the registrar's website and download a certificate of enrollment. That's going to show, if you're traveling during the semester, that you are enrolled and maintaining status. Okay. The other thing is, vaccination proofs may not be needed anymore, but what I would say is check with the guidelines. It's a good thing if you're traveling abroad to check with the airlines. I don't think you have that restriction anymore for COVID vaccinations. Okay. Details about travel are on our travel page. Look at the travel documents needed for students section and give all that information. So you don't have to remember right now, but know where the source lies for this type of information, which is our website. Okay, next. Okay, so there's that differentiation for, let's say, if you will transition to OPT, maybe this is your last semester, you've applied for OPT, or you might already be on OPT, then there are slightly different requirements to re-enter the United States. First thing is you want to make sure that, again, you have a valid passport, your I-20, and this applies to F1 students, that your I-20 is current and has that travel signature. Now, as I mentioned before, the travel signature, if you're a continuing student, is for 1 year, but once you transition to OPT, it's only valid for 6 months. So you want to be very aware of that part as well. If you have been approved for OPT by the government, then you definitely want to have your employment authorization document or the EAD card. This is the card that shows proves that you have been authorized to work on practical training by the government. You also want to make sure that you carry a job offer letter that contains information about your employment, or either it's going to be that current employment or the employment that you're just going to start if you're new on OPT. Make sure it's got, starting information, kind of describes what will you be doing, how many hours. These are the general types of things you want to show. The reason being why is whenever you enter the United States, the officer is trying to determine your purpose of entry into the United States. So if you're claiming, look, I'm coming on OPT, well, present those proofs, right? So the officer can verify your claim. If you have applied for OPT but have not been approved yet and you're traveling, then all of these things, except for you don't need to carry a job offer letter because you've not been approved for OPT yet. But instead of carrying the EAD card, you do want to carry your receipt of filing, right? So it's the filing of the OPT receipt application, okay? It's going to be coming to you in the mail as an official letter. I think it's an I-797C is the form. That's what it's called. You will also receive it through electronic means as well, because most likely if you've applied through online portal, the USCIS portal, then that's how you'll be communicated to. But the official one will still come in the mail, whether even if you apply online through the USCIS portal. note, something to keep in mind is make sure that you do not enter in either tourist status or any other visa category. Some of you may have more than one visa, right? So you may also have a tourist visa. So when you when you're at the port of entry, you want to verbalize why you're entering. You want to make sure you let the officer know, I'm I would like to enter as an F1 student because either I'm continuing my education, or you want to say I'm on OPT, or I applied for OPT, therefore I want to enter on an F1 visa. You want to verbalize that. And the other thing you want to make sure is before you walk away from that officer, just take a look at your passport. It will have a physical stamp, entry stamp, and then it should denote the class of entry, meaning that visa category is going to be F1, and it should say D/S as far as the expiration. And the D/S means duration of status, meaning that as long as you maintain your status for that visa category, you can be in the United States. So you want to look for those two things. The other thing, what I recommend is, it's not listed here, but what I recommend is take a look at your I-94 record. You always want to make sure when you come back into the US to take a quick look and make sure it's valid. It's got all the information that's accurate and it pertains to you. Okay. If there's a discrepancy or information on your I-94 record that's not accurate, contact our office and we can help get that corrected. But please do not enter in any other visa category. The reason being why is it will then basically cancel your OPT and F1 status. So you won't have that anymore. Be careful of that part. Again, this information goes into details on our website under the travel on OPT section of our main travel site. So take a look at that. Okay. And go to the, so the other part for the J1 really is not going to change. That's why I've not put anything else for J1. The J1 remains the same. There's no separate OPT or such status for J1s. J1s students will just have that one DS 2019. Same information applies, whether you are on continuing student or you have completed your J1 program and are on what is known as academic training, similar to an F1 OPT, but you want to carry those documents. Okay. All right, let's go. And if you've got, let's go to the next slide, please. And so here's some of our contact information. As a reminder, if you're not aware, our office is located in 300 Caldwell Hall. If you need to pick up any documents, please come by there and pick them up. If you need a quick travel signature, we can do that as well. Our office hours are 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. And we also we don't have walk-in appointments, but we do have scheduled appointments Monday through Friday. We've got mornings from 10 a.m. to noon, and then afternoon appointments are from 2 to 4 p.m. You can, of course, email us. And if you do email, make sure you provide as much detail as possible about your situation so we can provide the accurate advice and guidance to you. You can also call us as well. And of course, our main source of information is our website. I always encourage students to take a look at the website because it has a lot of information, especially a lot of basic information that you don't need to wait for us to give you. You'll have it readily available. Okay. All right. And with that, I can field some questions if there are any specific questions you have. Okay, Ryan has a question. Ryan, there are very few of us, so if you want, you can kind of unmute yourself and kind of just ask the question.
Okay. So, here's my question. I'm thinking, because you just said that if we want a signature, we can just schedule an appointment and
for signatures, you don't need an appointment. You can just walk in. Okay.
Okay.
Just advising because it requires time. We've got a small crew and a lot of students, so we find it's most efficient if we can concentrate our time for that particular student at a particular scheduled time. But travel signatures, don't just walk in and say, look, I need a travel signature. But as a reminder, That's you bring up a good point, Ryan, is you don't have to have us sign the I-20 physically. We can do this all digitally. So if you need a signature and let's say the office is closed or something like that, go to our website, again, under travel section, there is requesting a reprint or travel signature. You can request
see.
that. We can send the I-20 to you digitally. You download that, sign it, and that's a valid document now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I see. So, for example, if I'm traveling for winter break and like I would get a signature before I leave, or
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's always a good idea. I would say plan well in ahead, advance of your travel, right? Just in case, and always look at those documents. Not
Mhm.
everybody, not all of us are constantly looking at passports, right? When we look at it, we go, okay, yeah, I looked at it once, and then you want to make sure you've got those documents that are necessary for entry. But yeah, just come on in and we can do a quick signature. That's not a problem.
I see. So just to confirm, the it expires within a year, right?
Yes, generally speaking, exactly. If you're F1 student, again, from that date of signature, generally it's valid for 1 year. Like I said, unless you're a Canadian citizen, then it's 6 months, or if you're on OPT, then it's 6 months.
I see. Thanks.
Yeah.
Do we have other questions? We have just a couple minutes before our next speaker, who will talk about travel between Ithaca and major hubs.
Hey, you don't have to have questions now. Maybe if
Uh,
anything comes up, please send us an email, or like I said, set up an appointment. We can do that, or just call us, and then we can always call you back. So not a problem.
Yeah, Priscilla?
Yeah, I have a short question. Actually, thank you for clarifying all of that. I have a
Yeah.
J1 visa. I'm not a student. Actually, I'm a postdoc.
Okay.
And but I think it works probably the same way, right?
Yeah.
So
So you're
I sorry.
go ahead.
Yes. No, it's just that I have a trip scheduled for next week, and I already have the signature, but also my director of international affairs provided me a letter
Mhm.
stating my salary and my enrollment to Cornell. So this single letter could be already a proof of financial support and a proof of Cornell enrollment, or do I need to provide any other documents?
And is the DS 2019 issued by Cornell?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so you're on under, yeah, I want to make sure that's it's very important because there is, certain times we do have uh J scholars or so who are might be a postdoc here, but their documents were the DS 2019 was issued by another institution. So since you're issued by us, you make sure, yeah, you've got the travel documents. Again, same thing, you want to carry that employment letter. They may be asking for it, they may not, right? But it's always a good
Mhm.
idea to carry that because it shows your purpose for entry into the United States. And of course, your general passport and visa, that should be fine. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any other questions?
Pedro is going to be entering the Zoom any second.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah. So I'll turn off my video, but I'll be here. And if anything comes up while Pedro is presenting, if there's something I can answer, I'd be happy to do that.
Oh, you can share it. That's okay.
Okay, great. So, oh dear, give me just a second. Welcome, Pedro. He is the International Students Union president, and he is going to be talking to us today about end of the semester travel. And
Thank you so much.
yeah, is this
That's perfect.
working? Okay, great. All right.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. No, thanks so much for having me, guys. It's a pleasure talking with you all today. So just a very brief introduction. My name is Pedro, and I'm here representing the International Students Union. That's ISU, and I'm here to talk about, to give some tips and tricks about what's are the most preferred travel plans, and what has most international students in the past chosen while they make their travel plans towards their Thanksgiving break or winter break. So let's get started. So I guess just a very brief introduction, what is ISU? What is International Students Union? So about 20% of the Cornell University undergraduate population is comprised of international students. So ISU is the organization that represents all of these international students' interests. And we as an organization are comprised of this really, network of students, of international students passionate about connecting and helping international student community, either through funding different cultural clubs events, planning international events of our own, or running advocacy campaigns. And so that's why I'm here. We just love staying connected to international student community and, giving advice, giving, tips, helping based on what, we experienced as international students as well. So let's get started to the advices and I have to give today. So, I guess the most important thing we always like to say is, whether you're traveling abroad, always make sure to have your I-20 with you, have your passports, make sure you have all your essential travel documents with you. Make sure you check all the Office of Global Learning resources or either check out the ISU survival guides. This is definitely the number one biggest cause of headaches for international students while they're traveling. So as long as you make sure you have all your traveling documentation with you, everything is gonna go fine. But let's say, you've checked all the documentation you need, you have all that ready. It's time to go back home. Let's leave Ithaca. What are the options most international students choose while making their travel plans? So the three by far most popular ones are definitely to New York City. That's JFK, Newark, LaGuardia. Syracuse through the Syracuse Hancock International Airport, or through the Ithaca, the local Ithaca Tompkins International Airport. So I'm gonna briefly go through each one of these options and just briefly talk about what are the main things international students should be aware while making their travel plans. So first of all, is by far the most popular option is New York City. Airports like JFK, Newark, LaGuardia are some of the biggest airports we have close to Ithaca. And for that reason, those are the airports that best accommodate most of international students' travel needs. But there's some key things I think it's important for people to know, especially for international students that have never been to New York City before. First of all is, how to get there. So for those of you who may not know, it is about a 4-hour long commute to New York City. So it is a bit of a long drive where most people choose to go through bus. So either going to companies like Megabus, Our Bus, or either to going to Cornell's campus to campus bus. But I guess what has international students found the most daunting in this, I guess, traveling to New York City is not really the bus traveling, but rather navigating to New York City. Definitely the New York subway can be a bit, confusing, a bit intimidating, especially for those who've never been in it before. But with some of the tips I have to give, is definitely going to make the process seem much more simple than it actually is. So I guess the first thing I would say is always make sure you know what's the location of the bus terminal you're going to be arriving. For example, if you go to Our Bus, for example, you're most likely going to be arriving in the George Washington bus station. So that's normally towards the upper end of Manhattan, so a bit far away from JFK, for example. But if you're going to a Megabus, you're more likely going to be arriving through the Port Authority bus terminal. Now, the good thing about that is that there's a direct subway line to Port Authority, and this subway line takes you directly to both Newark and JFK. So both of these airports have subway lines in the airports. Now, if you go to the George Washington bus station, for example, you're most likely going to have to change lines or even get a cab. But as I've said, because this bus station is a bit far away from some airports, you should be aware of the price these taxi rides may cost you. So be aware of that. However, if you choose to go to the Cornell's campus to campus bus, you're most likely going to be arriving either at the Cornell Tech campus, the Cornell Club, or the Weill Cornell Medical campus. Now, the good thing about these options is that All of them have very easy, accessible entries to the subway line. And from there, you can very easily get to both Newark and JFK. Now, I think the biggest thing I also would say is, as I've said, the subway line can be a bit scary at first. You've never been to New York City before. So Google Maps is going to be your best friends. That's the best tip I got when I got here to Cornell. The Google Maps is such a easy to use app. And the good thing is that across all the New York City subway line, there is free Wi-Fi. So no need to worry about loss of connection, not having access to see what path you should take. No worries about that. Just make sure you have the Google Maps, and it's going to give you such easy directions, tell you when you need to change lines, where you should go, where to find the subway line. Very easy to use, so make sure you have that downloaded. Now, the last thing I would say about New York City especially is make sure you arrive early, because it is such a long commute to the city. What most international students have found to be the best ways to get there is to either arrive very early in the morning, so normally leave Ithaca around 8 a.m. and get to the city around the noon, and then flight late at night. Or what I found other international students doing is either arrive a day early, so the day before the flight, slip into the city, and then leave the next morning or afternoon. Now, it should be noted that, especially if you've never been to New York City, you should know that prices can be extremely high for hotels. So this option can definitely be a bit more pricey, but also less stressful. Just always make sure you have more than enough time to, get to the city, have some time to, expect that maybe some things are not going to go the way you want. Maybe you're going to get lost in the subway. You're not going to know where to go. So just make sure you have more than enough time to get to the airport in a timely manner. So that's New York City. So the second most popular option, I would say, is definitely, if you can go to the next slide, please, is Syracuse. So the Syracuse Hancock International Airport. So many Cornell students choose to go to fly from Syracuse to really avoid this, as I've said, very long commute from Ithaca to New York City. And the great thing about Syracuse is that it's very easy to get there through the R-Bus bus services, which go directly from the Cornell campus to right in front of the Syracuse airport. So very easy to use. They normally leave campus either from the Baker Flagpole and West or behind the Ganendigo dorm. So extremely easy to find them, and there shouldn't be no concerns. What I've also seen other international students do is to actually choose to do a prearranged car or a taxi. Now, it should be noted that this option can be a bit more pricey, and you should do it a long time in advance, but it's also another option. Another great thing about the Syracuse airport, I would say, is, especially compared to JFK or Newark, is a much less busy airport. So it only has 2 terminals, so much shorter lines, very easy to navigate and find yourself in, not many gates. So it's a very easy to navigate airports. And saying that, I would say most international students, or most students in general, just choose to maybe get a bus early in the morning or in the afternoon, depending where the flight is, and just getting there on the same day. It's, as I said, a very easy to navigate airport. Just make sure if you have 2 to 3 hours, that should be more than enough time to get your flights. Just know yourself and make sure you get there in a timely manner with no rush. But that's Syracuse. And if we can go to our last option, then it's Ithaca. So of course, Ithaca Airport, the great thing about it, it's extremely close to us. It's about a 15-minute ride from Cornell, so it's a very easy to use one. And most people choose to either maybe call an Uber or even take the Ithaca's TCAT bus system, or I've seen also a lot of people choose the local taxi services. Now, maybe for those who have never used the local taxi services, this is not just like in any other city where you can just call up the taxi and easy to go. Definitely, especially during the this part of the year where many people are living in Ithaca, going to the airports, make sure you call these taxi services early on, schedule well in advance, because definitely a lot of people are going to be using those taxi services. And what I would also say, I always tell students is, don't be afraid to ask a friend with a car, especially if you have any friends that are here from the US or even from Ithaca. As I said, it's just a 15-minute commute, so it should be no concerns, and it's definitely also the cheapest option. So that's by far the best option. So if you have a friend with a car, definitely contact them. Now, the one thing I would say is, if the Syracuse airport is less busy in JFK, then Ithaca is basically uncomparable. It's a extremely, small, very easy to navigate airport, so no concerns at that at all. But you should be expecting to have at least one connection flight. And these connection flights are normally going to go to maybe JFK, maybe Washington, Boston, Philadelphia, and some of these airports especially if you've never been to them before, can be a bit chaotic, a bit confusing. So I would say we always recommend to make sure you have at least an hour between connection flights, just in case you have to navigate between the different terminals, the different gates, if you want to get something to eat. So make sure you have more than enough time between your connection flights, because connections can always get a bit busy, a bit confusing, especially if your flight gets, maybe delayed a bit. So make sure you have always more than enough time between connecting flights. But that's the Ithaca option. And if we go to the last slide, those are really the best, I guess, tips and tricks most international students have faced in the past. But of course, we always recommend check out the Office of Global Learning campus resource pages, especially regarding what documents you may need during your travels. Make sure you check that out. And if you need any other information, we always recommend check out the ISU survival guides. It has a lot of key and very good information, not just for traveling tips, but really phone plans, car plans, anything related here in the US for international students. This is really tailor-made for, from students to students. So I always check that out. But that's really it for me. Thank you guys for your attention. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm free to answer any questions from you guys.
Thanks so much, Pedro. That was amazing. So much information. Yeah, does anyone have any questions for Pedro? I'm going to get the link for the survival guide, put that in the chat.
I have a question that's kind of, I don't know, a little bit off the topic, but for summer, I'm thinking about getting a storage house somewhere close in Ithaca, or in the region. And I'm thinking about just renting a car so I could take care of moving and also drive myself to JFK and then fly out. How is your comment on that?
Yeah, no, that is a good question. I would say, yeah, renting a car, I would say it's very difficult. It can be a bit difficult. I mean, especially if I would say, first of all, if you've never driven in the US before, driving to New York City can be a bit a challenge. But price-wise, it's definitely much more pricier. So I would say the bus option is definitely the most common one. But I've seen people do that in the past, so it's definitely manageable. But as I say, just make sure you do your research, know what the prices are definitely going to be like. If this is within your budget and this fits you well, I mean, you do in your pace. So that's a good thing about just driving yourself there. But it's difficult. I would say that I wouldn't say it's the easiest option, but it's a fun challenge.
Gotcha. Thanks.
One thing to keep in mind with car rentals is, especially if you do one way, it's very expensive because they have to bring that car back. So that's why it becomes a challenge, as Pedro was saying, on top of the fact that if you're not comfortable driving in the US, especially the city, things are moving very fast, a lot of one ways. If you miss a turn, you might get flustered. And so it might be, as Pedro suggested, the bus might be less stressful, although it may take a little bit longer. But driving and bus really doesn't take much longer. I've taken both. Maybe a half hour, 40-minute difference between the bus getting there a little bit later, but definitely less stressful.
Got it. Thanks.
All right. Well, I think that concludes our presentations for tonight. I'm going to throw in the chat both PowerPoints so people can take a look at that. Thank you all for joining. We have recorded this session, so it's going to be available on our website as well. So thanks so much. Have a great night.